Oh God, if it doesn't have the theater, then forget it. I mean, there is so much talent out here. People come from all over the world to be in this town, and it's like there's just 10,000 actors for one job, and it's just, I mean, all this talent, and they want to use their talent, and rightfully so. And Hollywood Fringe, we if there's 400 shows and they're doing 5 performances, that's 2,000 performances. And granted, a lot of them are solo shows, but with I, I lost track of my math, but just I mean, there's so much opportunity to support these wonderful, lot of kids, but young people or even the adults. But it's just having that available to do their craft, for the writers to get this stuff out on paper. I mean, for recovery, the recovery process, you hear this stuff about 12-step programs. When you do the 12 steps, what you're doing is you're taking all this crap in your head and in your heart and in your life, and you're putting it on paper where it can either die or you can arrange it and move it around and get some sort of healing by that whole process of taking it out here, putting it on paper. And that's what the writers do out here. They're writing their story, they're writing their truth, they're sharing their truth with others. And I get this, sanctimonious whatever, help other people, but that's what the writers, the producers, the actors, they're sharing stories. And if you take a look through the Hollywood Fringe Index, there's things trying to make us all better people. And if we just, we're all living in a vacuum, then we're not sharing our truths with each other. So it's the sense of community. Oh, the way that Ellen, there's Ellen and Lois and Stina and oh darn, I can't remember his name. Great young man. But the way they put it out is that there's a nice community where it's safe it's just a safe community. I don't know if they say it's safe to fail, because nobody should fail. But, if you have something horrible, people are there to put their arm around you and say, it's all right, let's try to do it next week better. And that's you don't get that in real life very often.
The shows at the Hollywood Fringe are very important, because it's very important that we tell these stories that not necessarily will have other opportunities to be told. And the more we go to these shows, the more we're able to keep the Fringe going, the more success we could lead other people and their shows to, then our stories can break upon the borders that Hollywood or that other people don't let our stories would normally be told. So I'm hoping that if we could all consistently go, as everybody knows about this, if everybody goes, we can encourage more people to put into the Fringe, more people to get stories out there, and we could cloud the industry with way more voices and progressively work toward a better world, if that makes sense.
Events like the Hollywood Fringe Festival and all of the Fringe festivals around the world are very special in that they are a platform for writers and artists to have their work seen. And those works, there have been multiple shows that have been in different Fringe festivals around the world that have won Tony Awards, that have won Pulitzer Prizes. They create a platform for artists to grow and to bring more quality entertainment to our viewers, to the world's audiences.
The Hollywood Fringe Festival is so important because, again, it brings people together in a city that historically doesn't celebrate theater like other famous cities in America. And it gives us this chance to really support the playwrights in this city and the artists in the city, and to see a lot of the actors that we're used to seeing on TV or on camera actually up in front of us doing this art. It gives us an experience that allows us to wash the dust of daily life off of our souls, and it allows us to connect to other audience members. You get that shared experience, and to these artists and to what they're doing. It relies so heavily on the community. We could not have these plays without all the other the theater directors in our community, the people, the Uber drivers shuttling people to and from performances, the restaurants that are feeding these casts and these directors, the costume shops, the thrift stores we're buying our costumes from. It literally takes such a global effort within our community of LA to put this up. And it's inspiring to see people come together to make that happen and to bring these shows to life. And it does take everyone.
Well, it depends. If you don't like theater, then I suppose you would take the position that there's no real need for people to support the Hollywood Fringe, because it's theater and comedy and music and things that, if you don't care about live entertainment, but those of us that do, I think it's a way of getting a chance to see things you would not see in a commercial theater. Many of these shows at the Hollywood Fringe will never see the light of day again because of finances or what have you. And this is an opportunity to see things, and it's been amazing the kind of shows that have been at the Hollywood Fringe. People that have autism have done shows, people with other disabilities have done shows. There's been an incredible array of all ethnicities and genders and orientations and identities, and that's something you're not going to get at the commercial theater houses, because they can't take that risk that something's not going to sell a ton of tickets. Whereas the Hollywood Fringe, you can put up a show relatively cheaply, and somebody like me, might be able to take the risk of putting up a few $100s or whatever, and not necessarily getting it back, just because we love theater and think it's important. And I think the audience hopefully will come along with that and have the same attitude. That's the main thing. At Fringe Festival, you're just going to see stuff that you're not going to see otherwise. If there was no Hollywood Fringe, many of those voices would not have an outlet and would not be heard. And this way they are.
I think the Hollywood Fringe Festival is important to the community because it's for those who are into theater, who are not all about movie stars and celebrity. It's for the writer. It's for the producer. It's a small theater producer's oyster to create. It's not like off Broadway, where it's more not necessarily prestige, but it's more the New York scene is very theater, and they expect their theater to be a particular way. Whereas Hollywood Fringe, again, is Hollywood. People just want to be entertained. But to me, if you have a great story, if a writer has a great story and a producer is there to help produce it, you can't go wrong with that. And I think the community who's willing to be a part of that, I think will benefit from that.
LA is so much a film and TV town, everyone comments about how New York is the theater town, but of course, in Los Angeles, we have the Pantage for musicals, and if regular plays are more your thing, we do have center stage theater and stuff, and sure, the Geffen, but that's the extent even for big productions. As far as we don't have an equivalent of off-Broadway here, we have a bunch of small black box theaters, which typically nobody goes to unless they have a friend or family member in the show. The Fringe Festival, that can get large crowds. It can get people going to see strangers' plays. And then for say anyone who loves theater, but also loves film and TV, and thus is living out here, the Fringe Festival is essential to give theater a real presence.
Here in Los Angeles, the Hollywood Fringe Festival, in my opinion, is even more important than in cities like Rome or New York. And the reason why I consider it more important in terms of community is because this city Los Angeles doesn't allow people together to be together. It's a big time. It's a huge city, spread it all around. It's very expensive. So every time you put your nose out of your door, you spend a lot of money that probably you're not earning. So you cannot do that. It's a city that gives you so many chances in terms of nature, but it doesn't help you to be together as a community. So it's a sort of individualistic kind of city, but not because people don't want, but because the geography and the layout of the city doesn't allow that. So events like Hollywood Fringe Festival invite people to be together, to stay together, to meet each other, even doing nothing, even drinking a Red Bull on the side of the street. Just being together and talking about life and feelings and the way you look at life and your perspective on that matter instead of another one, and meeting people that you never met in your life, and probably they would be your best friends if you had the chance. So that the loneliness in the city more than others is something that you live. I don't feel lonely, again, because I grew up in another city. I moved here very late, so I was already a structured person, and I knew what I wanted and especially what I didn't want. But for the Hollywood Fringe Festival, this is a big chance for the community. So it's the Hollywood Fringe Festival that does a favor to the community, giving this opportunity to stay together, to be together, to meet each other, to know each other, to hug each other, especially after a pandemic where we didn't have the chance to touch anyone. It was so terrible.
Hollywood Fringe is and anything that kind of resembles the ethos that I described that Fringe had, I think are incredibly important to not just local communities, but even, broader possibilities of social affinity, that extend beyond just a place like Hollywood, because they demonstrate very palpably and concretely, in some sense, but also with a tremendous deal of subtlety because of all the differences amongst people, what kinds of things are possible when people come into agreement to demonstrate a desire for affinity across difference. There within Los Angeles or even Hollywood itself, of course, there's a lot of stratification and sort of different areas where there might be a sense that certain people belong certain places and certain people belong other places. And I think Hollywood, the Fringe Festival, does not proceed based on those assumptions. There's maybe there is an assumption that you have some interest in theater, but I think the types of productions that are at the Fringe Festival are, there's essentially something for everybody, and things that would challenge everybody, but that are accessible and shared with a certain ethos of kindness and care. And so, for the kind of local community, it's just in terms of being able to mobilize the number of people that end up coming and to see the, variety of things that you can see all concentrated in one place, particularly when Fringe is able to be, really, fully up and running live, which, with all, hope and desire, COVID will cease to be the presence that it is sometime in the near future. It really shows just how lovely things can be by having different people in affinity with one another in the same place at the same time. But then I think from that, and this is something I've talked about with Matthew Quinn, that's really exciting about, the fact that there are fringes all over, not just the country, but the world. If people learn, especially for people like me who are very highly neoliberalized and have, really been taught and often benefited, at least superficially, from this idea of independence and doing things yourself and competing. It's a real eye-opening experience to see like how good it can feel to not be invested in those kind of narcissistic, competitive modes of being. And it makes you want to be that way with other people in other places beyond Fringe. And so I think that's one of the more powerful things, or the most powerful things, is after, at least for me, after having had the experience at Fringe, it made me want to not replicate that exact experience in other parts of my life, but it made me more aware of how other parts of my life didn't feel that way and didn't feel good, and made me, want to try to behave differently, or at least have a different awareness of other, ask other social contexts in which I circulate. And I think from just having that awareness, the possibility, and having an example of how things can and otherwise that could exist, it enters into the realm of possibility that meaningful kind of social change is possible. Which isn't to say that Hollywood Fringe in and of itself is a solution to the seismic social and economic, racial, supremacist issues that we have, but it gives an intuitive sense of what it might feel like for, to live in a different kind of social existence. And I think that's, it's a really special thing. And ultimately it comes down to the people who are participating in it. And it's just really exciting to get to have that occasional realization of like, oh, there are a lot of really tremendous people, in this place, many of who I never would have encountered other than for the opportunity of, having some kind of gathering like Fringe.
Why a Hollywood Fringe so important? Because I think now more than ever we need community. I think now more than ever we need to, we spent almost a year and a half in so much divisiveness, and I think we need to continue to heal after a very difficult year and a half. I mean, with the insurrection and Black Lives Matter and the tragic death of George Floyd last year, and I think we're having a beautiful awakening. We're learning so much more. We're becoming more aware of the untold stories, like Juneteenth. Finally a holiday. That's wonderful. But I think that theater is a connector, and I think the community of the Hollywood Fringe is an example of diverse people and artists coming together to create community. Everywhere. There's so many diverse artists in this community, so many diverse in terms of their intersectionality, and that's what I think we need. I mean, I think we need examples of how, our diversity makes us stronger, our intersectionality and what we bring makes us stronger, and why not celebrate that?